Happy New Year and welcome to our Bible in a Year challenge that we will be doing and not falling off by the grace of God. So, in my previous video, I said I wasn't starting from the creation story, but I've changed my mind and I will be starting from Genesis 1. And the idea here is to take 3-4 chapters for every sort of entry and just taking the lessons that I learned from that and sharing that with you. So hopefully you've read up to Genesis chapter 3 because I'm starting with 1 to 3 in this episode and we'll be able to relate to some of the things I'll say. Before I start, what I'd like to encourage you to do also is if you start this challenge, pick out the things too that stand out for you. But more than that, look for God in every chapter. Now, this is what I'm going to always do and always end the episode with something that stood out to me as a character of God from what I have read. Hopefully you follow me with this, and I would love to hear what you have discovered from your own reading. And yeah, it would be great to just to know that. So the lessons from creation story in Genesis 1:3 for me are: 1, the light that God called forth on day 1 wasn't necessarily the sun, because the sun didn't get created until after the 3rd day. If a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord and 1,000 years a day, we've heard that saying before, then I'm inclined to believe that perhaps the creation wasn't really done on 7 days, 7 literal days like we know. And remember that the sun wasn't even created until the 3rd day. So what was, counting one day as, the other? There are many Bible scholars that believe that creation didn't even follow sequentially or follow 7 days, that it was done over, maybe thousands or hundreds of years. I mean, it's food for thought. The creation of plants, vegetation, and trees was on the 3rd day. And the sun hadn't been created then because the sun was created on the 4th day. So do you wonder how they were able to survive without, the sun for photosynthesis and all? Yeah. And fish, the sea creatures, and the birds of the air, the avians, they were the first creatures to be created before, the ones that scurried on the land and the animals that, the big and small. I mean, and that's interesting as well. And for me, I thought about maybe that's why people think we evolved from fish, because, the scientists were able to see how far, their sort of their creation came from. I don't know what word they use, but yeah, that's what I used. After God created man, he gave him seed-bearing plants and trees for food. Now, have you ever heard the saying that, as humans, we were created to be herbivores and not omnivores, to eat animals? And this is something that made me think about that, because God didn't give them animals. Instead, he gave them authority over the animals. And then, authority means probably protecting them and looking after them. So killing them would have been a deviation from that. And I'm sure we will see as we go on when things changed and humans started to eat animals. But in the beginning, they only ate plants. So now, when we come to the fall, I think about the fact that the serpent went to Eve and not Adam. Why? Like, I kind of get the feeling that she was running him at the time, because she was with him. He had a conversation with her. She fell for the temptation. She was convinced. Then she ate the fruit and gave it to her husband. Get this, who was with her. So why didn't the serpent talk to the husband? I kind of get the feeling that Eve was in charge, even though she was created to be the helper. She was, maybe running Adam, and maybe that was even the beginning of the things going out of order. And when God was pronouncing judgment on them after, the fall, when he had realized what was going on, he did say to Eve that your desire is to control your husband, but he will lord over you. So that made me think about, how maybe the lack of order was something that came into play here. And then obviously Adam received his, punishment because of Eve. And then it made me think, like, why were you just standing there and following everything she said? I don't know what happened there. Anyway, when they sinned, when they ate the fruit, it was supposed to be immediate judgment, you see, but God didn't drive them out immediately. He kept them. He even clothed them. He made them clothes out of animal skins. And then that tells me that for, animals to give up their skin for them to be clothed, the animals probably had to die. Could that have been the beginning of sacrifices where something had to die for something else to live? Food for thought. When we go back to the beginning, God placed two trees in the middle of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. But he asked them not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which was what they ate. So I wondered about the tree of life. In the end, when God did decide to drive them out, which I believe was years later after what they had done, he was saying that lest they eat from the tree of life and live forever, he needed for them to go out. So I believe that the tree of life was there because remember that man wasn't created to die, but the tree of life was there that if they ate, they will live forever. So I believe that was God's plan. Like I know about God, nothing ever catches him unawares because he's omniscient. He knows everything. So I believe that was his feel-safe plan. I know these people are going to be trifling and eat this. So this other tree is the tree of life. And the tree of life is also mentioned in Revelation. And I mean, we'll get there, but not to jump ahead of ourselves. But, when they were driven out, he gave a cherubim the assignment to look after the tree with his flaming sword so that man couldn't go near it. Now, let's get to what I wrote down as my lesson of who God is, or knowing God in this chapter. Even though man had fallen and seemed to have disappointed and spoiled his plan for them, God showed persistent mercy, even as he dealt with their rebellion. He didn't let them die after eating the fruit, which was meant to be the consequence. He still clothed them and kept them. Let's not forget that the fall automatically activated the plan to redeem man, and he could have ended it right there and then, started afresh with a new man and a new wife, but he didn't because he's merciful. So my key takeaway from this is as much as God is intentional, wise, the creator, he's also infinitely merciful. I hope this blesses you in some way, and I would love to hear what your take is on what you've read from Genesis 1 to 3. We'll meet back here again and talk about Genesis 4 to 7. So hopefully you'd have read it by then, and some of the things that we'll be discussing will be fun to you. Thank you for joining me, and see you again soon.